Hey gang, just wanted to connect with you on really two topics here, really based on the assignments that we have. I want to get some clarity as we kick off the semester. It usually helps sometimes for me to give some feedback, but I wanted to do it on the front end for two things. One of those would be discussion board posts. As you can see, throughout the semester, you will do discussion board posts. Um, and I want to give some feedback on what content I'm hoping to see of that. And one of that is this isn't stream of consciousness thought just typing in. So I give you a prompt. There's usually some things to go look through, and then there are questions based on that prompt for you to answer. So then you just create your own thread within there and drop your answer into it. Um, I'm not going to get totally APA crazy on you on discussion board posts. I just so I'm not gonna say no contractions, but I just don't want conversational tone. I want it to be a little more academic in your writing, and I want you to actually give some thought to it, which is why in the syllabus I give you a word count, but I'm not giving you a word count intending for me to count everything. I'm just saying I really can't see that you could give a substantive post um, with anything less than 250 words. So I just want you to put a little thought into it, have some good response. One of the key pieces also want to see in those are a citation or so um, you know, from the text or from an article that's connected to it. So when you're reading through, I've tried to tie pretty much most discussion board posts to the readings that you had during that week. So try to pull some quotes and citations from the text itself and layer it into your thoughts specifically. And make sure some of the posts have some more than one question within a question. So make sure you're answering all of that and responding to each piece of it. So those are my main goals for the discussion board post. Then when you look at the artifacts, so the artifact, I always remind people for the artifact, this is us. If you listen to my intro presentation, and I talked about context, and I talked about the stool of historic context with the three legs, and I showed you an example of a football program from a game in the 1920s, and then I built the context around it. So remember, an artifact, it's that football program. An artifact could talk about what is happening at the institution at that time. So if it's 1926, what was going on in the 1920s or things to that effect at that school. And a good example, sometimes I'll talk about if there were an artifact that occurred at Western Kentucky University in the mid 1960s. One of the unique things to talk about would be the fact that Western Kentucky transitioned from Western Kentucky State Teachers College to Western Kentucky University in 1966. So that's a big thing that occurred on that campus, and it would be really neat to talk about that. Staying in that same decade realm, if something was around 1970 and it, you could connect it to, and if it was Kent State, then you're talking about activism and Kent State tragedies and things like that. So you're talking about what's happening at that institution at that time of the artifact. And you are talking about what's happening in America and the region. So if your artifact is coming from an institution in the state of Kentucky or another state, talk about what's going on in that state. What were the issues? Are there still major issues with Jim Crow laws? Are there major things going on with development, urban development, and things to that effect in the city? Or what laws are hitting in the state? What is the typical experience of residents in that area? What's going on in that area, and then also what's going on in America, i.e., major social movements and other things that are occurring at that time. So you start kind of talking about those types of things. And then that third piece is what kind of higher education legislation or movements were occurring at that time. So you could talk about the Moral Act, or you could talk about Pell Grants coming into play, or you could talk about so many other different things. I just want to make sure you're looking at what types of things are occurring, and then you build all of that around to show that at that time of that artifact, there was this happening at the institution, this happening within the state, possibly the city if there's something going on, this happening in America, and this happening in higher education movements and legislation. So that really tells a full, rich picture of what was going on with that. And the biggest thing I want you to know with these is, for the artifacts, I don't want you to write a biography. So, for example, some people have done like an oil painting from a dean, from first female dean at an institution. I do not want a biography of that dean. The whole thing. What I want is at this time, while that dean worked there, sorry, I've got a dog barking too. While that dean worked there was something going on that you're explaining, and then you're building all the context around there. The other piece to talk about within the artifact is it has to be tied to an institution. So the artifact can't just be the GI Bill. As great as a impact the GI Bill had on higher education, that's not the goal of the artifact. The artifact is something that is tied directly to the institution. So maybe you actually have a document of some kind of processing piece of paper that a Army veteran used at a school to collect their GI Bill benefits, and then you build GI Bill legislation around that. So sometimes I'll see that someone just picks Greek life or GI Bill or something, and that's too vague, it's too broad. I need it to be something unique to that college, and it can be anything. It can be anything you want, and it can be personal. I've had somebody who redid their house in a renovation, and they found a journal from their grandmother's time in college, and they wrote about that journal and then built an experience of context around what she was experiencing in college at that time. Pretty neat, and it was really specific to that person. I don't need a physical copy of it. Really just need a JPEG, a picture of it, because I know the first one or two it would definitely be hard to find an actual thing, because you're looking back in the 1700s and things to that effect. So just make it something personal to you, something of interest to you. And in fact, I've even had a person who asked if they could do a chronicled version of a topic. And you can do that if you want. You don't have to. You can do 3 different artifacts that were just interesting to you. A college pennant hanging in a dorm room in the 1800s, or a football program from a game, or things like that. Or someone previously in one of my classes actually looked at activism in each of the 3 time periods of the artifacts. So they found an artifact about activism in one time period, found an artifact about activism in another time period, and another artifact about activism in the 3rd time period, all tying it to a college, but all seeing, really she wanted to see the growth and the evolution of activism, and it was just interesting to her. So I just wanted you to see that. Those are some of my thoughts as you're kind of getting into this, that you're really telling a story and you're weaving the different things around that artifact that are occurring at that time to help tell the full story of your artifact description. So that should help you, hopefully, with a little bit of clarity in what I'm thinking on discussion board posts, and also with artifact descriptions. So as always, feel free to email me, reach out and connect. We can talk during collaborate sessions, things like that. But I just wanted to give you kind of an intro video during the first week, so you kind of had some context on where I was thinking. Good luck, y'all.